Welcome to Mastering Questions, the Power of Questions. Volume 1, Mastering Questions. What you say, the questions you use, how you say it, will all have an impact on people's fame. Now, what is fame? Fame is a person's ability to receive feedback, a person's ability to have a positive, engaged attitude, a person who demonstrates high degrees of motivation, and a person who is truly engaged and present in the workplace. The game is changing, and what's changing so rapidly for all of us is that we now have virtual work environments. We have hybrid work environments. We have companies who are going back into the workplace. All of these are going to require different types of conversations, not just situationally, just from a physical presence standpoint. The other day when I was putting these materials together, I was talking to someone who had their first in-person client meeting with a customer. And he later told me, he said, I was off, I wasn't doing well, I wasn't asking good questions. I just really felt like I wasn't myself. And I said, what do you mean? He said, just eye contact felt weird. Why is that? He had not had an in-person business meeting conversation in well over a year. Yet there's going to be both. There's now virtual meetings, right? We've been living those every single day since the start of the pandemic. So the game is changing because now we have people with anxiety, stress, mental health. We have to be more empathetic, yet employees have to be more resilient. And we know deep down, we can't just go up to somebody who's struggling with mental health or stress or anxiety and say, get over it. What we have to do is ask questions. Questions build perspective. Questions start the decision-making process to change. Questions build self-awareness. So there are 5 question types we're going to talk about: self-actualized, self-awareness, rating questions, third-party questions, and then we're going to teach you something called the rule of engagement plus reflection. Now you notice the text is in different colors. So the green text means this is a really positive question. The orange or the yellowish text means we're going to get a little bit more aggressive. We're kind of entering some murky, maybe even troubled waters. And the red text is you've got someone who's pretty resistant, pretty defensive. They're pushing you back. All of these tactically will serve you well. Now, number 1, a self-actualized question is somebody who asks a what plus a success imperative question. The best analogy that we always teach is about kids. When we tell our kids, you have a test next Tuesday, you have to study. What do kids do? They don't come up and hug us and say, thanks for the revelation, Mom and Dad. What do? They roll their eyes and say, I know. The same thing happens with employees. When we look at an employee and say, don't forget that report's due next Tuesday, a self-actualized question uses a technique called framing. The question goes as the following: what are you going to do to successfully prepare for your test next Tuesday? And what could I do to assist you? What are you going to do to successfully prepare that report for the marketing team? And what could I do to assist you? It's a what question plus a success imperative. Number 2, this is probably one of the most powerful questions. Self-awareness is at the foundation of people's coachability and approachability. Self-awareness, and it's been noted by Tasha Eurich, the author of Insight, great study. When she surveyed people, 95% of people said they were highly self-aware. When she tested them, she found out only 10% of people are somewhat aware. So a self-awareness question is, what did you learn about yourself you're committed to improving? What did you learn about yourself that you're committed to improving? And you can even add a little bit of zest at the end, that you're committed to positively improving. Most people will react to those two questions very, very well. Now, let's say we have someone who's not being a great teammate. Here's where rating questions are awesome. A rating question, I typically use a 1 to 6 or 1 to 8 scale. The reason I use an even number is so they can't go directly in the middle where they feel safe. So Bob, on a scale of 1 to 6, with 6 being you are a flawlessly committed, no hesitation, no qualms, no pushback whatsoever, willing to do whatever it takes to assist a teammate. And 1, at times, you can be a little bit overindulged in your own work and maybe miss some opportunities to help out your fellow teammate. How would you rate yourself? Now, notice what I did. I gave the bookends some meat, some substance. When you do that, you get people thinking differently. It's tough to commit to a 6 and it's tough to commit to a 1. They typically go somewhere in the middle. Now, the tact of the rating question is, if somebody says, well, I'm about a 3 or 4, you might say, I had you in the same range. What do we need to do to move you towards a 6? And what would you suggest we do together? The response to the rating response is as important than just asking the question. Third party. Let's say, again, we have someone who's not looking in the mirror. They're being a little bit more resistant. You might say, Charlie, if your best friend were here right now, how do you think he or she would describe you? And what suggestions would they make for you to positively react to whatever this situation is? By bringing in a third party, you get them thinking a little bit differently. You're the one really asking the question, yet you've got them thinking about their best friend. Where this question initially came from was very interesting. We would use it with the fairy godmother comes flying out of the sky in this bright pink dress. And she asks you, what that does is it lowers people's defenses because they start thinking about this ridiculous image. Now, ROE, rule of engagement plus reflection. Let's say we're coaching somebody and we're going to use Lisa. Lisa is being very defensive. She's not a great teammate. And you've talked to her a number of times. You never start with these type of questions. That's why that green, that orange, yellowish, it's kind of like streetlights. You want to start with the green, then morph into the orange or the yellow. Then as a last resort, you go to the red lights. So let's say, Lisa, we've talked to her a few times and it's not working. We might say, Lisa, I want to give you some feedback and I want to share that feedback in a very unique way. And when I share it with you, I want you to just assimilate it, digest it. I don't want you to interrupt. I don't want you to tell me why it's not possible. I want to do something that's a little bit different. I've given this a lot of thought, and I want to give you the same amount of thought and time. So I might say, Lisa, you have an opportunity to insert yourself as a more positive teammate, and I really want to learn from you what you're willing to do and what you will do in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Let's get back together tomorrow morning. I want to give you some time to think about it. And so what that does, everybody, is a rule of engagement is something where you control their response. Reflection, time is a wonderful partner to the coaching process. So those are the 5 question types that we're going to go through. Now, the words we encourage you to use are we, share, opportunity, perspective, observation, and the word and, not but. We, we're in it together. Share, it's a friendly word to disseminate information. The opportunity is the whiffed, what's in it for them. Perspective and observation are neutral. And the word and is inclusive, but is the great verbal eraser to the good stuff. So for example, Lisa, I'm really frustrated. You're not getting along with your teammates. And I just think that things have got to change very quickly. Versus saying, Lisa, I think we have an awesome opportunity to turn things around. And I want to share with you a couple perspectives where we could do that together. And I'd love your permission. Which one sounded friendlier? See, the goal of having these conversations is to have a two-way street, not just get it off your chest or to have conversations. You want it to be inclusive, and these words will help you. So when we have high performers, we've got to ask questions. Lisa, I think you're performing at the highest level I've ever seen you. Where is that coming from? What can we do to accelerate that to even a higher level? Now that you're achieving some of this success, what could we do together to seek out other successes? You have to coach high performers. They're your most marketable talent. Now, when we have struggling performers, that's where those green light, orange light, yellow light to red light conversations will serve you well. Again, you want to start with those green light questions, such as, what are you going to do to successfully turn it around? What do you think we need to do to successfully work together to raise your performance? That frames them out to think positively. That's why you start with the green light questions. So, every day we have situations. Now let's take attitude. Let's think about an attitude. When you think about attitude, we often hear people do what? Well, you got to cut it out or else. An attitude is a skill set. If you get someone with a negative attitude, trust me, they've been practicing that for a long time. Number two, we have to plan out our questions. So I might say, Tom, what are you going to do to successfully and energetically turn things around? What are you going to do to positively engage with that teammate? You insert the words with self-actualized questions for the success imperative to get them to turn things around. If anything, do the opposite of what they're currently doing. When they start exhibiting some of those tendencies, that's when you can ask a self-awareness question. So Tom, I saw that you and Lisa were really engaged. So what are you learning about yourself you're committed to improving from a teamwork perspective? Self-actualized to self-awareness. It doesn't have to be in a scripted order, but you can see how the two question formats can really play off of each other. Now, let's say we're having some success, not the ultimate success we would like. I might say, Tom, I'm noticing some really good things that you're doing. Your effort is great. And I think about even accelerating what you're currently doing. Let me ask you a question. Scale of 1 to 6. 6, everybody on the team views you as the ultimate teammate. You're positive, you're energetic, you're helpful. Your attitude exudes teamwork. And maybe 1, at times you can be a little bit pulled back or inhibited or just focused on your own stuff. Where would you rate yourself from 1 to 6? They give you their number and you say, what do we need to do to move you towards a 6? And what are the first 2 actions you would suggest? Now, let me give you a deviation on the third party. I might say, Tom, if your best friend were here right now and he or she had to say 2 things that they absolutely enjoy about you in terms of spending time with you, what do you think they would say? And when he answers, you could say, so how do we bring that Tom into the workplace? Notice what I'm doing. I'm scaling from green down to orange. Now, let's say after weeks and weeks and weeks, we're just not making the progress we'd like to. We might say, Tom, we have to turn things around really quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to do something really different. I've given this conversation a lot of thought, and I'm sure you have as well. And I would love to have you become the ultimate teammate. And I want to accelerate you to that destination of being a great teammate in a very short period of time. We've been at this for a little bit, and I want to push the envelope. I want to push the pedal down. I want to get there sooner. And quite frankly, we need to. We're not making the progress that I think we could. So what I'd like to do is, now that I've shared that with you, is give you a couple days, and I want you to come back with a written plan. I want you to reflect. I want you to be honest with yourself and come back with 3 positive things you're going to do that will create success as a teammate, that you will hold yourself accountable and share with me on a weekly basis going forward. If anything, I use a little bit of a self-actualized question at the end of that. So the green questions are usually in the infancy of the conversation. The orange or the yellow questions are a little bit more of, I'm going to challenge you now because we're not quite getting there. The red questions are more of those questions of, We're not getting there. Things need to improve here pretty quickly. So, when we're using questions, plan. I'm going to share it. Practice. Then you can perform at your optimal level. We just gave you a situational, albeit a very simple one, around questions, right? So think about questions. They require practice. Think about somebody with a negative attitude who needs to be more positive. They're going to need to practice. Please, as a professional leadership coach, plan your questions. Again, it's not a script. You're going to ask different questions. It doesn't have to be verbatim. And when you practice them, we know one thing about people. We're not predictable. So when we're not predictable, what do? We have to navigate the conversation. We have to think on our feet. That takes practice. Then and only then when we perform, meaning when we actually have the conversation, we're going to be ultra prepared. I hope this has helped.